a whole year or 2 years in the case of Jubilee. What shall we eat the 7th year? God answered, then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. Ain't that something? The Lord was thus asking Israel to trust him for their need. If they obediently let the land rest, he committed himself to supplying their need. He would show them his love and grace, but only if they demonstrated their faith by obedience. The principle was the same as Jesus in Matthew when he said, seek God's will first, and let him provide the means to do so. So God would, the way that you say, well, how in the world they ate a whole year? They didn't have no food. Well, God would bless their land to produce so much food that they had so much food that they could store up, so much food that they had. Their cupboards were overfilled, their storehouses were overfilled because they obeyed God. And God blessed the land so much that they had room enough to give somebody else something. But now if they weren't obedient, then their land was cursed. They had no harvesting. They had nothing would come up the way that they wanted it. It would die. And that probably would be like some of us thinking, well, Lord, I'm going to just wait until that year and see what I can get, because I don't think, we would have some excuse why we would not obey the voice of the Lord. Any questions? Any questions so far? No. All right. This is simple enough, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Now, caring for the poor, redeeming his property. Israel's landholders' practices were based on the premise that all land belonged to the Lord. He had merely leased it to the Israelites as strangers and sojourners. It therefore could not be sold forever. That is, permanently. It might change hands because of economic necessity, but it would revert to the original owner or the heirs in the year of Jubilee. The land, however, could be redeemed at some point before Jubilee if the man who sold it because of his poverty later regained enough resources he could buy it back. The word translated any of his kind actually refers to the nearest kin. So we see that God was making provision for those that did not have a lot of money, that did not have a lot of resources. And say, for instance, you got in poverty, or you got to the point where you had to sell your land. Well, God made it possible so that the land could be restored back to your family or back to the original owner. And basically, what God was saying, the land don't belong to you anyway, because you're just strangers and sojourners. So what God was saying to you, don't oppress the poor. Now, I don't know how we've gotten to the point where we oppress the poor. And I try to tell people that poor folks don't have a lot, but look like we pay the burden of everybody. And I think some of these big companies like Pico and some of them put the burden on poor folks to pay for some of these other tax things and breaks that they give to the rich. Because you can see your bill is all right during winter time. Then all of a sudden, when summertime hit, it looked like your bill is 3 times what it was in the winter. Now, you didn't move, did you? You didn't move. You got the same stuff in your house. And I know some of y'all, now that you got a big, huge house, I can't imagine you using that much energy in your house where your bill go from $61 to $310. How could it be? How could it be? You running the heater, you got a space heater, you got all that stuff. Same stuff that those that you live in an apartment have central air, central heat, right? So you're using the same thing. So how could it change? But they saying, man, you done used almost 10 times the amount of energy that you were using in the wintertime. So God was making provisions for those that were poor. And then, like I said, he was letting those that were in bondage out of bondage, freedom from bondage. Now, I don't know whether or not we can release all the prisoners that's up in the prison during the year of Jubilee. I don't think I would want some of them bad boys released. I think, or bad girls. I think I want some of them just to stay right on behind bars.
Amen.
Because of the fact that if you release some of them on society, we might wreak havoc. It might wreak havoc. But Israel, you got to understand, is unique. It's unique in itself. This is a nation that has its religion. You were born into it. You were born into Judaism when you were born. You were born as a Jew. And Jewish people that spoke Hebrew were born into their religion. They didn't have a choice. See, some of us, we're born, but we have a choice. We have a choice whether we want to be Catholic, Methodist, Baptist. The Israelites didn't have that choice. When they were born, they were automatically placed into their religion. Matter of fact, the men, the boys, when they were born, they were circumcised on the 8th day. They went through a ritual. The ladies went through their rituals, and there were things that from day one that they were bound by because they were born into that religion. Now think about if you were born into a religion. How would you feel if you had to do certain things? See, some of us get away because we don't have to do nothing. We just, whatever, put loose, fancy free, and do what we think we are. And there were certain customs in Israel that if they were going on today, we probably wouldn't have any children. Because children couldn't be disobedient to their parent back then. If they were stoned. They were taken outside of the city and stoned to death. There was no adultery going on, although if it did, you know what the adulterous woman would get? She'd get stoned to death. They'd take her outside of the city and stone her. Yes.
So you said if they commit adultery and the woman gets stoned, so what's happening to the man?
The man wouldn't. It was the woman. It was the woman because the women, for some reason, was to have a husband, and they were not to allow themselves to be partakers of more than one man. So when they allowed themselves to be partakers of more than one man, that means that they were whorish. And then if they went from man to man and they caused a breach in marriage, then that was breaking one of the commandments. Thou shalt not what? Commit adultery.
Okay, so if...
Hold on, brother Dante, go ahead.
Okay, so so what would that mean? So let's go back then. It was accepted just me. Now it was accepted now for a man back then to fornicate with multiple women, though he has a wife, so he doesn't get no type of thing, no type of...
Well, most men in Israel were married. They came after they had what they call their bar mitzvahs. When they became of age, they were at liberty to be betrothed. The word, I think, is the best word. And when they became betrothed, they were already given a wife, because marriages were arranged by the parent in Israel. You couldn't choose your wife. Yes.
But that didn't answer the question. I said if he had a wife and he went to another woman, what would that make them?
Say that again.
If you said when they get of age, they have a bar mitzvah, and they just given a wife. Now, what if he decides, I don't even want to sleep with my wife, you know, this is my wife, this is who I'm called to have that with, and I went to another woman. And so
he didn't have that type of choice to choose which woman he wanted to be with.
I know, I'm not saying the choice, but just like a woman that's married didn't have a choice to sleep with another man other than her husband, just like he didn't have that choice to sleep with another woman other than his wife. So how the man is just scot-free and the woman is stoned to death?
Well, now, don't get me wrong, men weren't totally scot-free. It's just they weren't caught in adultery. Now, what happened was there was a law that if the man who releases that woman from him, and another man marries her, then that's when the act of adultery came in.
For the man. Right?
For the man. But the woman didn't have a right. Sorry, ladies. But during that time, the women didn't have the right that men had. The men, matter of fact, I'll show you how strong it is, that if a woman could not bear a male child, she was considered a curse. Because it was the male children that were the heirs that carry on the name. That's why we get off into this heavy, deep subject about homosexuality. Because it could not be so named in Israel. How? Because if you could not bear children, or if you were not doing what the Bible says, reproducing, as God had said in the beginning, then you are going against what? And then God said it was an abomination. So you know that He ain't going to let all of this stuff, this hanky-panky going on. You know. And then He had laws for that. He said you shouldn't lie with a man, as a man lying with a man, a woman lying with a woman. Then it goes to say that you shouldn't lie with beasts. There were some folks that were seriously out there.
Bestiality.
They were there. They was out there sleeping with animals. Yeah. You think this stuff just happening now? See, folks think that all of this perversion that has come on has just started happening. All the way back to Lot. If you heard about Lot's wife. A lot of people don't know why Lot's wife looked back. Because Lot's wife had something back there she had to look back for. And when she looked back, she turned to a pillar of salt. That's right. So she had got caught up in the perversion of Sodom and Gomorrah. Did that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else have any questions? So you didn't have a right to choose what you wanted to do back if you were born into this religion. You were already bound by certain ceremonial laws, ceremonial things. You were already bound from birth on some of these things. You just didn't have the right to choose your destiny, I should say. All this stuff, oh, we can choose our destiny. No. See, they done threw them out of time. They done threw them out. All these prosperity preachers that talking all that, oh, you got your destiny in your hands. See, that didn't go on in Israel. Amen. God already had a blessing plan for His people. And if they will, the Bible said for them. Now I'm talking about Israel now. Mind you, we're talking about Israel. We ain't talking about us. We're talking about Israel. He said, if you be obedient, willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. Meaning that whatever you do as unto the Lord and you're obedient, God was going to prosper it. But you had to walk according to the laws and statutes that there are. Now there's some people that still believe that we're supposed to follow the Old Testament. Y'all know that, don't you? There's some folks believe that we still should follow the 10 Commandments. Y'all know that, don't you? Oh, I don't mean to hurt y'all feelings like that.
No, that's okay.
You know? But we're not bound by Judaism anymore. Judaism was for the Jews. And you can see how it was a taskmaster for them. Because if they didn't follow the law, they were killed right then. It was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You kill my dog, I kill your cat. That's the way it was. They got some of that stuff going on over there now. Woman was blinded. I think man blinded her with some acid. And she was allowed to blind him, or the law was allowed to blind him. And if you're still in some of those countries where they believe like this, they chop your hand off. See, that would cancel out stealing over here. Right there. We wouldn't have to worry about folks stealing over here. That would just do it. Really.